The last time I truly believed in my family was Thanksgiving last year. We were all gathered around my parents' dining table in their home just outside Austin. The turkey was perfect, the laughter genuine. Jessica, my wife, sat across from Kyle, my cousin. They were joking about something, their smiles easy and natural. I remember feeling this warmth in my chest, thinking how lucky I was. My wife got along with my family. Kyle and I were close like brothers. Everything felt right. But there was something in the way they looked at each other that night. Something I ignored because I trusted them both completely. A year later, everything collapsed. Not because my wife cheated, but because of what my family said when they found out. Before we go any further, I need to know where you are watching this from. Drop your location in the comments below. And if you have ever trusted someone who completely shattered that trust, go ahead and hit that like button right now. This story is going to be long, but I promise you will want to hear every single word of what happened next. Make sure you subscribe because you will not believe how this ends. Let me take you back to the beginning, to when life still made sense. My name is Connor. I am 32 years old, and I work as a software engineer for a tech startup here in Austin, Texas. 5 years ago, I married Jessica. We met through a dating app, which I know sounds unromantic, but it worked for us. We dated for 6 months, and I knew she was the one. Jessica worked in marketing, always energetic and full of life. We decided not to have kids right away. Both of us wanted to focus on our careers, first build a solid foundation. It felt like the responsible thing to do. Kyle was more than just my cousin. He was 3 years older than me, the son of my Aunt Helen, who is my mother's older sister. We grew up together, every summer, every holiday, every birthday party. When I learned to ride a bike, Kyle was there teaching me. When I got my first job, Kyle gave me advice. He worked in real estate and did pretty well for himself. He was single, charming, the kind of guy everyone liked at family gatherings. My parents adored him. My mom always said Kyle was like a second son to her. My family was tight-knit. We had dinner together at least once a month. Every holiday was a big event at my parents' house. My dad, Robert, is 65 now. He retired a few years ago from running a construction company. He always taught me that family comes first, that blood is thicker than water, that you stand by your own no matter what. My mom, Linda, is 62. She spent her whole life as a homemaker dedicated to keeping our family together. She always said the most important thing in life was maintaining harmony in the family. I believed her. I was raised with those values. Everything started changing in March of this year. Looking back, the signs were there, but I missed every single one. Jessica started coming home late. At first it was once a week, then twice, then almost every night. She always had the same excuse. Big project at work, tight deadlines, client presentations. I believed her because why would I not? I trusted my wife. I even cooked dinner and left it in the fridge so she would have something to eat when she got home. That is the kind of husband I tried to be. Around the same time, Kyle started showing up at our house more often. He would just drop by saying he was in the neighborhood. We would sit on the back porch, drink beer, talk about work and life. Sometimes Jessica would come home early and join us. The three of us would laugh and talk. I thought it was great that my wife and my cousin got along so well. I actually felt grateful. Not every wife enjoys spending time with her husband's family. But there were small things. Things I should have paid attention to. Jessica's phone would ring, and she would glance at the screen and let it go to voicemail. When I asked who it was, she would say it was just spam. One time, Kyle and Jessica laughed at some inside joke, and when I asked what was funny, they both said it was just work stuff. Another time, I came home early from the gym and saw Kyle's truck parked down the street. I figured he was meeting a client in our neighborhood. He was in real estate after all. It made sense. The second month was when real doubt crept in. Jessica became distant in our bedroom. She was always too tired, always had a headache, always had an excuse. We went from being intimate a few times a week to maybe once every 2 weeks. When I tried to talk to her about it, she said she was stressed from work. I suggested we take a weekend trip to reconnect, but she said she could not take time off right now. Then she changed her phone password. We had always known each other's passwords. It was not about distrust. It was just one of those things married couples do. But suddenly she changed it. When I asked why she got defensive, she said she needed privacy, that I was being controlling. I backed off. I did not want to be that husband who does not trust his wife. The breaking point came on a Friday night in late April. Jessica said she had a team-building event at work and would be home late. I tried calling her around 11 p.m. just to check in. No answer. I called again at midnight. Nothing. She finally came home at 2 in the morning. I was still awake, sitting in the living room. She said her phone died, and she lost track of time. But her blouse smelled like cologne. Men's cologne, not mine. When I mentioned it, she said the restaurant was crowded and she must have been close to some guy. Her explanation sounded reasonable, but something felt wrong. The following weekend was my mom's birthday party. The whole family gathered at my parents' house. I watched Jessica and Kyle carefully that day. They barely looked at each other. When everyone gathered for a family photo, they stood on opposite sides of the group. It was too deliberate, too careful. When it was time for cake, Kyle suddenly said he had an emergency showing and had to leave. Jessica also wanted to go home early, claiming she felt exhausted. The coincidence bothered me, but I said nothing. On Wednesday afternoon, everything came crashing down. I woke up that morning with a terrible migraine. By noon, I could barely look at my computer screen. My boss told me to go home and rest. I left the office at 2 p.m. When I pulled into our driveway, Kyle's truck was parked in our garage. My garage. I sat there for a moment, confused. Why would Kyle be at my house in the middle of a Wednesday afternoon? I opened the front door quietly. I was not trying to sneak. My head just hurt too much for noise. That is when I heard it. Laughter. Coming from upstairs. From our bedroom. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my temples. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling like walking through water. The bedroom door was half open. I could see clothes on the floor. Kyle's jeans, his shirt, Jessica's heels lying next to them. I pushed the door open. There they were, my wife and my cousin, in my bed. Jessica screamed and grabbed the blanket. Kyle jumped up, his face pale with shock. For a second, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. It was like time stopped. Kyle started stammering. He kept saying my name. Connor. Connor, let me explain. But I could not hear anything over the ringing in my ears. I was not even angry in that moment. I just felt empty, hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left nothing but air. I turned around and walked back downstairs. I grabbed my car keys from the hook by the door and left. I just drove. I had no destination. I drove around Austin for hours, not seeing anything, not thinking anything. My phone kept buzzing. Jessica called 15 times. Kyle called 8 times. My mom called 3 times. I did not answer any of them. Eventually, I ended up at my friend Jason's apartment. Jason and I went to college together. He is one of those friends who asks no questions and just lets you crash on his couch. I told him what happened. He was furious. He kept saying I needed to call a lawyer immediately. I just nodded. I could not process anything yet. I was still numb. The text messages from Jessica started coming in. I am so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. Please come home. We need to talk. I did not respond. What was there to say? I had seen everything I needed to see. There were no words that could undo what I witnessed. I finally fell asleep around 4 a.m. When I woke up, it was almost noon. Jason had made coffee. He sat across from me and said I needed to face this. He was right. I could not hide forever. That is when my phone rang. It was my mom. I answered. Her voice sounded worried. She asked where I was. She said Jessica had called her last night and told her everything. I was shocked. They had already called my parents. My mom said Jessica and Kyle both reached out to her. They felt terrible. They were so sorry. Then my mom said something that made my blood run cold. She said she understood I was hurt, but these things happen. People make mistakes. Jessica and Kyle did not mean for this to happen. I could not believe what I was hearing. I asked my mom what she meant by these things happen. She went quiet for a moment. Then she said that Jessica and Kyle were both very remorseful, that I needed to remember Kyle was family, that Jessica had been a good wife for 5 years, that maybe we could all sit down and talk about this calmly. I asked her directly if she was defending them. She said no, she was not defending anyone. She just wanted everyone to calm down and work through this together. She reminded me that Kyle was Aunt Helen's son, and she could not just turn her back on her own sister. She said Jessica had been kind to her over the years, that she considered her a daughter. Then she said the words that broke something inside me. She said I needed to come home so we could all sit down and figure this out as a family. I hung up without saying anything. I looked at Jason and told him my mom was taking their side. He looked as stunned as I felt. He said that could not be right. But it was. My own mother was asking me to sit down with the two people who had just destroyed my marriage. The next call came from my dad. His voice was firm. He told me to come home and handle this like a man, that running away solved nothing, that I needed to face the problem head on. I appreciated that he at least acknowledged there was a problem, but then he added that family is family, and we work things out. I realized he was also asking me to forgive and forget. Then Aunt Helen called. She was crying. She said Kyle was devastated, that he knew he made a huge mistake, that he was so sorry. She begged me not to blow this up. She said Kyle had worked so hard to build his real estate career, and if this became public it would ruin him. She actually said that. She asked me to think about his future. Nobody asked about my future. Nobody asked how I felt. Every single person who called me was more concerned about Kyle and Jessica and keeping the family together than they were about what had been done to me. By Sunday, the pressure was unbearable. Everyone in my family knew, and everyone wanted me to attend a family meeting at my parents' house. Jason warned me it was a bad idea. He said they were going to gang up on me, but I needed to hear what they had to say. I needed to understand how my own family could possibly justify this. I arrived at my parents' house Sunday afternoon. My dad opened the door. Inside, my mom was sitting on the couch. Aunt Helen was there. Kyle was there looking at the floor. Jessica was there too, her eyes red and swollen. The room felt suffocating. My mom started talking. She said we were all here because Jessica and Kyle had something they wanted to say. Jessica spoke first. She said she was sorry, that it was a mistake, that she and Kyle never meant for this to happen. Kyle nodded along. He said he was sorry too, that he had betrayed my trust and he would regret it forever. I asked them how long it had been going on. Jessica hesitated. Then she said, 2 months. 2 months. Not a drunken one-night mistake. Not a momentary lapse in judgment. 2 months of deliberately lying to me. 2 months of sneaking around. 2 months of betrayal. Then came the part that shattered me completely. My mom said they had apologized and I needed to forgive them. I stared at her. I asked if she seriously expected me to just forgive them. She said yes. That is what families do. They forgive. My dad added that sometimes men have to swallow their pride. That family is more important than ego. Aunt Helen started crying again. She begged me not to make this a big deal. She said if I made this public it would destroy Kyle's reputation in the real estate business. Then my mom said the words I will never forget. She said if I divorced Jessica it would tear the whole family apart. She asked if I had thought about how this would affect her relationship with Aunt Helen. They were sisters. This would put them in an impossible position. My dad nodded. He looked me straight in the eye and said I needed to just get over it and keep the peace in the family. That being a man meant knowing when to let things go. I sat there looking at each one of them. Not a single person in that room was on my side. Not one. They all wanted me to pretend nothing happened, to go back home with Jessica, to shake Kyle's hand and move on. All for the sake of keeping the family together. I stood up. My voice shook when I spoke. I told them I understood now. They wanted me to act like none of this ever happened. My mom started to say that was not what she meant, but I cut her off. I said I had to leave. I walked out of that house knowing I had lost more than my marriage. I had lost my family too. The next morning I met with a divorce attorney. She asked if I had evidence of the affair. I told her I caught them in the act. She said that was more than enough. With that kind of proof, I would have the advantage in asset division. We talked about the house. It was in both our names, but I had contributed 70% of the down payment and most of the mortgage payments. We talked about bank accounts. Again, I had contributed far more than Jessica. The lawyer said this would be a straightforward case. Jason asked me what I planned to do about Kyle. I told him I did not know yet. That is when Jason mentioned something interesting. He had a friend in the real estate industry. Kyle was apparently in the middle of negotiating a major deal with a big investor. The investor was very particular about reputation and character. If anything damaged Kyle's image, the deal could fall apart. Jason was not suggesting anything. He was just giving me information, but I understood the implication. I want to be clear about something. I did not want revenge. I was not interested in destroying anyone's life out of spite, but I also was not going to protect them anymore. I was not going to stay quiet to preserve their reputations. If there were consequences to their actions, those were consequences they earned. I had the divorce papers delivered to Jessica at work. She called me immediately crying. She begged for another chance. She said she loved me. I told her if she loved me, she would not have spent 2 months sleeping with my cousin. She said it was complicated. I said it was actually very simple. She made choices. Now she had to live with them. My mom called again. This time she was angry. She demanded to know why I filed for divorce. I told her she had advised me to get over it. This was me getting over it. She said I was not thinking about the family. I asked her if she had thought about me when she told me to forgive my cheating wife. My dad got on the phone. He said I was being selfish, that I was tearing the family apart. I almost laughed. I was the one tearing the family apart, not Jessica and Kyle who had the affair, not my parents who chose to defend them. But somehow I was the problem. I did something I am not particularly proud of, but I do not regret it either. I posted something vague on social media. I did not name anyone. I just wrote, "When family chooses the cheaters over the victim." That was it. No details, no accusations. But people talk. Friends started asking questions. Rumors spread. Within a week, half of Austin knew what had happened. Kyle called me. He was furious. He asked what I was trying to do. I told him I was just living my life. He said I was ruining his business. The investor he had been working with had heard rumors and was asking questions about his character. I told Kyle that he should have thought about his character before sleeping with his cousin's wife. He said I was being vindictive. I said I was being honest. There is a difference. 2 weeks later, my family demanded another meeting. This time the tone was different. They were not asking anymore. They were angry. Aunt Helen accused me of deliberately sabotaging Kyle's career. I told her Kyle sabotaged his own career by making terrible choices. My mom said I was being cruel, that I was taking this too far. My dad said I was acting like a child. I finally lost my temper. I told them I came to the first meeting hoping they would say they were sorry, that they would stand by me, that they would tell Jessica and Kyle what they did was unforgivable, but instead they asked me to sweep it under the rug. They asked me to sacrifice my dignity and self-respect for the sake of appearances. My mom started crying. She said I was being unfair. I asked her what was unfair. Was it unfair that she told me to get over my wife's affair? My dad stood up and told me to leave. He said, until I learned to respect family, I was not welcome in their home. I walked out. Aunt Helen ran after me. She grabbed my arm and begged me to think about Kyle's future. I looked at her and said Kyle was 35 years old. He could build a new future. But nobody seemed concerned about my future. Nobody asked what this had cost me. I got in my car and drove away. This time I did not look back. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Because of the evidence of adultery, I kept the house and most of our assets. Jessica had to move into a small apartment across town. Kyle lost his big real estate deal. The investor pulled out after hearing too many questions about Kyle's personal life. His income dropped significantly. He had to take a position with a smaller firm. I cut off contact with my parents and Aunt Helen. I did not attend Thanksgiving that year. I did not go to Christmas dinner. A few cousins reached out to me privately. They said they understood why I did what I did. That gave me some comfort knowing at least someone in the family saw the truth. But the core of my family, the people who raised me, they were gone. I threw myself into work. Within 6 months, I got a promotion. I started spending more time with real friends, people like Jason who stood by me when it mattered. I took up hiking. I traveled alone to Colorado and spent a week in the mountains just thinking and healing. It was the first time in months I felt peace. Through mutual friends, I heard that Jessica and Kyle never actually got together after I left. Apparently, once the thrill of the affair was gone, they realized they had nothing in common. Jessica tried reaching out to me a few times, saying she made a terrible mistake. I never responded. Kyle stayed at his new firm, rebuilding his career slowly. My parents occasionally sent messages through cousins asking if I was ready to reconcile. I was not. I am not going to pretend the first few months were easy. They were brutal. Especially during holidays when I saw social media posts of families gathered together. There were nights I questioned whether I had made the right choice, whether I should have just forgiven everyone and gone back to normal. But then I would remember sitting in that living room listening to my own parents tell me to get over my wife's affair. I would remember Aunt Helen begging me to protect Kyle's reputation instead of my own dignity, and I knew I had made the right choice. I started seeing a therapist. That helped more than I expected. She taught me that putting yourself first is not selfish, that boundaries are necessary, even with family. Maybe especially with family. She helped me understand that I did not owe anyone my pain just to keep them comfortable. That was a revelation. I had spent my whole life believing family came first no matter what. But family is supposed to protect you, not demand you sacrifice yourself for their convenience. My friend group expanded. I met people through work who became genuine friends. I joined a hiking club and discovered a passion I never knew I had. Climbing mountains, pushing my body to its limits, it gave me something I had lost. Control, confidence, strength. About a year after the divorce, I met someone. Her name is Sarah. She is a graphic designer, funny and kind and honest. We started dating slowly. I was cautious this time, but also more authentic. I told her everything on our third date. I figured if she was going to run, better to know early. She did not run. She said I did the right thing, that anyone who asks you to accept betrayal is not worth keeping in your life. I learned something important through all of this. Family is not always right. Blood does not give people permission to hurt you, and then demand forgiveness. Keeping the peace is not worth losing your self-respect. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from people who refuse to see your value. My parents taught me that family comes first, but they were wrong. Your own well-being comes first. Your dignity comes first. Your peace comes first. I do not hate Jessica anymore. I do not hate Kyle. I do not even hate my parents or Aunt Helen. Hate takes energy I do not want to waste. But I also do not have any desire to reconnect with them. They made their choice. They chose appearances over integrity. They chose comfort over justice. That was their right. And it is my right to choose myself. People sometimes ask if I regret how I handled things. If I wish I had been quieter, less public, more forgiving. The answer is no. I handled it the only way I could while keeping my dignity intact. I did not lie. I did not exaggerate. I simply refused to hide the truth to protect people who hurt me. And if that truth had consequences for them, well, consequences are part of being an adult. I am 33 now. I have a good job, good friends, and someone in my life who treats me with respect. I live in a house I earned. I wake up every morning without resentment weighing me down. I still think about my family sometimes. I wonder if my mom ever realized what she asked of me. I wonder if my dad understands that being a man does not mean accepting disrespect. I wonder if they miss me. But those are their feelings to process, not mine. The most important lesson I learned is this. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is not forgive. Sometimes it is knowing when to walk away. I walked away with my dignity, my self-respect, and my future. They stayed behind, clinging to their image of a happy family. but that image was always a lie. And their lie is not my problem anymore. So let me ask you something. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your self-respect? Have you ever had people tell you to just get over something that broke your heart? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about standing up for yourself, even when it costs you everything. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they are not wrong for setting boundaries. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps someone out there who is facing a similar choice. Remember, you are worth more than anyone's comfort. You deserve people who protect you, not people who ask you to protect your betrayers. Take care of yourself. You are worth it.